The Ryan Ries Show from Southern California. This is The Ryan Ries Show. Post your questions using @Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Are you ready?
All right, it's going down. Tonight, I have my friend, Tom Hughes, in studio from his church's 412 in San Jacinto.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. Yeah.
California. And all of you guys that listen to the show, you guys know I always murder names. Always. But I got it right tonight. So I met you about 2 months ago. How did we even connect? Who connected us? Someone connected us.
I think it was James Cadiz who connected.
James Cadiz. Yeah. And he's been on the show several times. James Cadiz texted us and says, hey, Tom Hughes wants to connect with you. I said, who's Tom Hughes? I travel. I don't know. Yeah. You know, there's so many Calvary Chapel pastors. It's hard to stay connected. So then I stalked you online. I looked you up, and then I'm like, man, this guy has this massive YouTube channel, and you do this a prophecy updates, and then you got this awesome church I showed up to, packed, people on fire for God. Got to go out there and do the Kill the Noise tour. Saw people get saved, rededicate their life. Some people, we heard some cool testimonies of some girl's back got healed. When she went home, she realized it. And so God's just moving. And it was an awesome, amazing experience to be out there with you guys.
Oh, it was great having you. The whole, the Sunday you were there was fantastic. The night before when you came for tacos was good.
Yes. That place was actually really good. And you were announcing it at your service that this Mexican restaurant was a good taco spot, and I was bragging about it. So I went after, and I found that several people from your church there. They Googled it, and we ended up eating tacos with them. So it was amazing. And without getting into the whole story, I ended up getting a flat tire on the way home, and I spent about 6 hours waiting to get this new tire plugged. And then it was all sketchy. They're like, I don't know if the plug's going to hold because the hole's so big, because the vice grip went basically through the handle of the vice grip went through your tire. So I remember I was driving through the Ortegas, and I'm like, oh no. If this thing goes out right now at night, might just die out here.
You might. On the Ortegas.
Literally. That place is sketchy. But anyway, I wanted to bring you in studio. And today, I want to talk to you I want to get into your testimony, and then I want to end it with kind of just a pulse on culture, what's going on with end times, because every time I do some kind of a prophecy show update, people love it to death. So, but you have a very colorful past. I can't speak right now. You grew up in Riverside, California.
Yeah. Riverside and Orange County, kind of both.
Orange County, yeah, hopping back and forth.
I was born in L.A.
Okay.
Family moved to Orange County when I was young. Went to Catholic school.
You're Catholic.
I was an altar boy in the whole bit.
An altar boy.
I was an altar boy, and then family moved to Riverside, and that's when the trouble began.
But this is you were in high school in the 70s.
High school in the 70s, yeah.
So then where the trouble began? Was it high school?
It was really after high school. So in high school, it was pretty typical 70s. You smoke a little dope and you drank a little bit. I mean, it was really culture.
How about LSD? Where did that fit in? You had to be crazy to take that, or was that around?
I had friends that did that. I wasn't interested. I did do mushrooms.
Yeah.
After high school.
Got it.
And I didn't really enjoy mushrooms that much. And then
it's too much commitment. It's like an 8-hour trip.
yeah. And most of my friends that were on those things, they didn't do so well. So I had some things I would look at and say, I'm not so sure I want to do that. That was one of them. However, I wasn't paying enough attention.
Yeah.
So I get out of high school, and then I end up getting a job in construction, and met this guy, and he said, hey, you want to make some extra money? I said, sure. And I'd already been part of the pot culture. I didn't like smoking it that much, but I did smoke it. And he was selling pot. And he was connected with the Mexican mafia, who I think is what the name is for the cartel now. And so I say, sure. So this goes back probably, I'm thinking about 1980. And so I got connected with him, and I started selling pot. And I was pretty proud of myself, because most of my friends were selling baggies of pot, and then I started selling pounds.
Yeah. And
just upgraded, started selling 5, 10, 20 pounds at a time. And the money was great.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was actually a lot more afraid of some of the people I was working with in the business.
Right.
Not the Mexican mafia.
Oh, no?
It was the other people that I remember doing a deal with this motorcycle gang. And they had me on the edge. I was thinking, these guys are going to take all my stuff, take all my money. They're going to kill me, and that kind of that kind of thing. So I mean, you were dealing with some pretty sketchy characters.
Totally.
And so had that, but the money was great. I mean, even today, that money would still be really good.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it thinking, I'm never going to be able to get out of this business. But then my connection, the guy who got me into it, he ends up getting busted. He got turned in by a friend. Huge sting went down. He got busted. So that ended my pot selling career because he was my main connection.
Right. So what'd you decide to do from that? Just back to construction, basically.
So, yeah, well, no, I decided I was going to sell cocaine.
But how'd you get introduced to cocaine?
Well, the guy who, when I started doing all the pot sales, was just part of, hey, let's do these deals.
I have this
Hey,
other
by the
deal.
way,
Yeah.
and the stuff was coming from the Mexican mafia.
Yeah.
So I sit there, I go pick up 10 pounds or 20 pounds. By the way, let's do a few lines before you leave. And I said, man, this is the life. You know, this goes back to the days of Miami Vice. I don't know if you remember that TV show.
I do.
And all that other stuff that was going on. So, cocaine was a huge thing back then.
Big time.
And the problem with cocaine was I tried to sell it, but I liked it too much. So I ended up getting a pretty substantial addiction to it.
Right.
And then I started smoking it and smoking crack. And that was where the trouble really started in my life.
And crack came out in the 80s.
It came out in the 80s, and that was bad news.
Crack is bad.
It was exceptionally addictive. And, you hear those things. I had friends who were doing heroin and doing all those other things. And I heard about, crack's addictive, and I'm going, okay, well, whatever. So, I was already on coke, and then so I did the crack, and it was like one time, and that was it.
Yeah, it's that. You know what? Actually, I got into crack for a little bit, or I've not into. I've experimented with it several times, but that I always tell people that is the most addicting drug out there. Don't mess with that stuff. That stuff will get you first try.
Yeah, it did.
Yep.
That's exactly what it did. It was first try. It wasn't like pot or something like that.
Yep.
And even just cocaine wasn't like the first try.
Nope.
And it's cocaine itself is a different type of addiction too.
Yep.
So I ended up getting addicted to it, and it had a hold on me.
Yep.
And there's a lot of different things that go with that culture too. It's not just you've been there. You know what it's like. You have a lot of friends that have been part of that or in it. That's part of what your ministry is too. So there's so many different things that are part of the culture, the people, the parties. Some of the dark things that you get involved in, at least I certainly did. You end up taking some very dark turns.
Yep.
And the thing is, you're with people that to this day, the ones that are still alive, I love them.
Yeah.
Some of them I actually got reconnected with over the last few years. They ended up reaching out to me when they found out I was a pastor. This is 30, 35 years later. And they had followed my life, maybe found me on YouTube or something like that and say, man, and but and those people are as addicted to the stuff as I was, or they were. So we're all caught in this stuff together. But you get into some dark spiritual things. I mean, there were definitely some demonic things that were taking place in my life.
Talk about a couple of those things, because there is people that are watching the show right now that are struggling with addiction, drugs and alcohol and different things, and pornography, and any of those doorways. These are all doorways that, like that band The Doors, we've talked about this before. They used to call themselves The Doors. Jim Morrison used to eat peyote and LSD, and the doorways would open to the supernatural. He'd see Indians dancing around and shaman Indians and the whole thing. When you open yourselves through drugs and alcohol and pornography and like these sin lifestyles, it opens up the doorways for the supernatural from the dark side to invade your life in your surrounding area. So that's where the influence comes from. So, and I've had several events of like these kind, but tell me about some of yours, because some of these people are probably listening, have experienced some of these things.
Yeah. Well, there's one time in specific, and let me preface this with this. Robin Williams, remember him, comedian, committed suicide a few years ago. There was some stories that came up about him afterwards where he talked about these where he felt like he was possessed.
Really?
And certain things would happen to him when he'd be on stage. He said it wasn't even me, and it would just take over, and he had all this power in different things. So I read these different things about him, feeling like he was possessed. And I'm convinced that that is a lot more real than most people think. Because here's what happened to me. I remember on my bed and just having a conversation one night. I don't know if it was with the devil or with a demon.
Yeah.
It was probably with the demon. You know, I think the devil's isolated in particular or areas, not isolated, but he's not everywhere. Like God is everywhere.
Yeah.
The devil's not everywhere.
Yeah.
So probably a demon. And the conversation basically was this: I will give you this if you will just let me have you. And it was a very friendly conversation. But as I thought about it, I remember seriously thinking I should do this because I really want that. I think I should do this. And I thought, you know what? I do not want the devil to have me. And I was not a believer then, so his conversation was this unsaved guy on drugs having this conversation. But I had enough sense about me to say, no, I'm not going to open up the door to that.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I'm convinced if I open up the door to that, I don't know. I'm convinced I would have been possessed at that moment.
100%.
So I can fast track from there to when I was living in Newport Beach. When I lived in Newport, a friend of mine took me in. He knew I was a mess. I lost everything. And so I go and move in with him. And I remember being down there one night, and I'm laying in my bed, and there all of a sudden I'm on my face, and there's this presence in the room. And I won't go into all the details because it was there was a physical presence in the room. It wasn't just some weird thing I saw or some ghost-like thing. It was a physical presence in my room. I could feel it touching my skin.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've talked to people like that before.
I've had the where a demon showed up in my room. Actually, after 3 days of cocaine and Xanax. No, 3 days of cocaine and ecstasy. We partied for like a week, and then after the next night, I didn't party that night. I ended my night, went to bed, woke up the next morning, went to work. That next night, I had the sleep paralysis where I seen a demon in my room manifest, and it jumped from one side of my room to the other, and then it came at me, and then another one was on me, holding me down, choking me out. And that is common. Sleep paralysis. The mainstream calls it sleep paralysis. That's demonic activity.
Yeah.
The doorways being open. You're talking about something
Totally.
like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So totally. And, you know, if you haven't been there, even in the Christian world, talk to a pastor or something like that, they're thinking, you're just nuts. You need some drugs. You need to go get some
It's a real
some
thing.
of the pharmakia from the pharmacies to get off this stuff.
I do want to say this before I forget as you go on. I can't tell you how many young people I talk to from 12 years old, 9 years old to like 16 in high school that have had these experiences. Ever since there was that resurgence of all the supernatural films that were coming out, like that movie Ouija, which was the Ouija board movie, and like I can't think of the other ones, but all those really dark, demonic stuff that started coming out over the last probably 15 years. Since then, I've been meeting with people, and I've heard this sleep paralysis, demons manifesting, choking them out, holding them out in bed. It's so common with the youth. I could not believe it. I thought it'd be just like a crazy drug addict, but this is just with like kids that are watching the supernatural films, and it's opened themselves up to the stuff to happening in their room.
Oh, totally.
As you know, I don't have to convince you.
No, totally. Yeah. In the 60s when I was a kid, we used to go to friends' houses and play with Ouija boards. I don't know if your dad ever experienced anything like that.
No, he never messed with that.
But I did.
Yeah.
And that was it was just, you know, parents didn't really think anything of it. I remember we shut down all the lights, and you pull out this Ouija board and you start going through the seance stuff. So these things were semi-common in that period, the 60s and the 70s, and they gave birth to some really weird things. You know, and then it's the same parents who, not being saved and following that same path, they end up raising their kids like that. And then we have a culture like we do now. And then, you know, you go out to, I don't know if you've heard of Burning Man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you look at Burning Man. Here's a drug-fueled spiritual experience. You know, they build a temple out there every year. They have a different theme going on every year, drug fueled. Most of it is these multimillionaires, tech industry moguls, the whole bit that are out there doing this stuff. That is spiritual, and it's demonic stuff that's going on. But as drugs really are an open door. And, you know, I remember hearing in the 70s, you know, drugs are an open door to this stuff. I went, no, that's a bunch of nonsense. And I can tell you, in my case, cocaine definitely opened the door. Something opened that door. And but I was open to different spiritual things.
So here you are, you're hooked on crack and heroin, which is so gnarly. Not heroin, crack and coke. And you're just you're in Newport Beach one night, right? So what was the process of how you ended up finding God?
That's a great question. I'll try to make this as short as I can.
Take it. We got plenty of time.
All right. So what happened was I was on a 3-day binge. And
all you cokeheads and speedheads know about 3-day binges.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of like the number, huh? 3 days? Because first day you're high, second day you're trying to keep the high, third day you're out of your mind and you're like, okay, I gotta go to bed.
Third day you're physically, your body's just thrashed. Your mind is, by then your mind really is, you're messed up. Yeah. So literally I was up for 3 days. I started on a Friday and it's Monday. And I remember it was actually Monday night. And I was living in Newport Beach right on the boardwalk. And I ride my bike down by the pier. There's a bar down there. There's a bunch of bars down there at the time. There probably still is. I ride my bike to a bar down there, and I was by myself that night for whatever reasons. I guess most of my friends just said, I'm out of here. So I go down there, and I'm sitting there in the bar, and I had a cigarette with me, and I had filled it with cocaine. And so mixed with the tobacco, right? So I'm sitting there. We call
that Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs. There you go. I forgot what the name of it was. That's exactly what it was. So I'm sitting there at the bar, and I pull it out, and I light it, and, you know, you just get this crazy buzz off it. So I do it, and the bartender or owner, whatever he was.
Because the place smells like crack now.
Well, yeah. Well, he looked at me, and he picked up the phone. And I knew he was calling the Newport Beach police. This is in the 1980s. Yeah. And it wasn't going to be good for me. So I had enough sense to know I'm in trouble. He knows what I'm doing. And Newport Beach police find cocaine on me. I'm done. It's not like things are now. So I got my bike. I couldn't ride it. I was too drunk to ride it. So I walked it back to my house. I go upstairs into my room, and I'm barfing. You know how that is. I'm barfing. My nose is just a bloody mess from all the stuff you're doing. And I just cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, here's the deal. I promised that I would quit doing drugs. I promised I'd give my life to you. I've done all these different things because I had heard the sinner's prayer before. I had some religious friends that would try to convince me I needed Jesus, but wasn't real sure what that was. I watched some religious TV, so I was able to make some sense of some things. And I just said, okay, I promised you this, I promised you that, but here's the deal. I'm never going to get off drugs. I remember resigning that to myself. I'm never going to get off drugs. I really need to. This stuff's got a total hold on me. And I said, but here's the deal, Lord. I just want to know you. I want to know that you are real. I want to know you. And I don't care if I ever get off the drugs. And I think, Ryan, that's what God wanted from me. Yeah. Instead of a promise of grandeur, it was always in the past was, I want to know you. Please get me off the drugs. Yeah. This time was, forget about everything else. I just want to know you. Yeah. And finally, I was right in my mind with him. And I fell asleep. When I woke up the next day, which in itself was a miracle to me, I walked out of my room. I looked out at the beach and the ocean, and I knew I was born again. I didn't understand the terminology.
You knew there was a change.
Yeah. Oh, I knew there was a change on the inside of me. I knew I was definitely a different person than I had ever been before. And I remember just a couple days after that experience, standing on my balcony, looking up into the sky and saying in a very good way, I don't belong here. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But now, now I know what it means. Yeah. I am not of this world. I'm in this world. I'm not of this world. I have a citizenship in heaven. But all of these things were coming together, and it was, and I never looked back. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I never looked back.
You know, when you're saying this, it reminds me of several people that I've talked to that have been my friends. One guy, he was in the Mongols motorcycle gang, one of my good friends, and when he got saved, he gave his life to Christ. He said he woke up in the morning and he said he heard the birds chirping, and then he opened the window, and looked out, and it's like, oh man, the trees are so green and the sky's so blue. There was that the spirit was turned on. He got the feeling of the spirit, and now he was alive spiritually, and there was something that has changed. And you know, a lot of people that you see walking around that are just going through the life, they're just down and out, they're depressed, and you know, just, oh man, the world's just so lame, it's just boring, and it's so down and depressed. But then when you give your life to Christ, like everything just changes. The Bible says all the old things will pass away and all things will become brand new. He makes you a new creation of Christ instantly. And listeners that are, you know, tuning in right now, you may be in that situation where you just feel like you need a shift in your life. You have to come to Christ. You have to give your life to Christ. God, just believe in him. And when you were saying that you were like got real with God, I was thinking, get real with God and he'll get real with you. He doesn't want lip service. He doesn't want, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. He knows you ain't going to do it. Just be like, God, if you're real, prove that you're real, and I want to follow you and show me how to do it. And that will change. Repent of your sins. It's that simple.
Oh, it is. If you are real with God, he's going to be real with you.
He will. But people don't get real.
Yeah, you have to. You can't come to God, you already said, with lip service. You know, Isaiah the prophet wrote, they draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And that's the way I was for years, you know, growing up in Catholic school. Even I would attend at the time, every once in a while, Harvest or Calvary Chapel Riverside at the time, where Greg Laurie was the pastor, before I got saved. And sometimes I was just going for the girls, to be honest with you.
Hey, you know what? If you're not Christian, go for the girls of the church.
You know,
that's how they all get saved.
You know what? Well, eventually, you know, I got saved, but I had heard some things. I remember, this is true, Ryan. I remember one time I started going to Harvest because, or Calvary Riverside, whatever it was called at the time, this girl had invited me. So I started going, and I would drink a 6-pack of beer before I would go. I remember it was a Wednesday night. Yeah. And I would drink a 6-pack of beer or a 12-pack of beer or whatever it was. Yeah. It's just who I was. Yeah. You know, and I will tell you this much. I praise God that nobody ever came up to me and said, get out of here. Yeah. You smell like beer or whatever, because I don't know what that would have done to me. And but God had got me in there to just shut up and listen. And I did. I still wasn't saved, you know, but I eventually got saved, and that was all. It was all a process. Yeah.
So tell me about that process, because people need to know what the transformation process looks like. Because, you know, when you hear stories and testimonies, you're like, so I was this, and this. I gave my life to God, and then everything was fine. Well, no, there was a process. Because you said earlier, you know, when we were talking, you were saying that, you know, it took you a couple months to go through, because like you were listening to these Bible studies, but you would leave and you're like, wait, that was an awesome Bible study. But wait, what did he say? Oh, yeah. You had all the fog and the cloud from the damage and just like the drug abuse and just the years of your brain not operating clearly, like soberly.
Yeah. That's exactly
the chemical, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Plus, you have these temptations from your previous lifestyle that are constantly pulling at you and all of that. Mm-hmm. So my brain was mush or whatever. So I am living in Newport Beach. I ended up going to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. A friend of mine had invited me. So I ended up going there. Your dad's there. He would come and rotate in preaching. Greg Laurie would, Mike McIntosh. This was way back then. And it was great. In fact, the first retreat I ever went on, those 3 guys were speaking at it, amongst some others, which was huge for me at that time in my life. But I met there at Costa Mesa and listening to Pastor Chuck Smith, and I remember going on Sundays and thinking the whole time, this is great. This is great. This is just what I need. And then as I would leave, I would get to the foyer on my way to the car. By the time I got to the foyer, I could not remember a single word that Chuck said, but I remembered it was really good and I really needed it. And I would come back again, and then I'd come back again. But it was 2 years like that. 2 years, and it was God had to wash my mind before I could really be stable on my own and be able to go out and have a normal life. Yeah. And so that it was a 2-year process. It didn't just happen. It wasn't like the switch was flipped and all of a sudden I was just in my right mind. I'm teaching Bible studies. I understand the Bible or any of that.
Yeah. There's a time of like detox, you know, when you give your life to Christ, and whether you're on drugs or whatever. Like I was talking to someone the other day, they were just saying like when they gave their life to God, you know, because they used to listen to a lot of like, gnarly music, you know, with just lyrics that probably were talking about drugs and sex and all that stuff. But when they gave their life to God, what happened is they went on. It was like a 2-year, like they only listened to worship for like 2 years. And during that process, God was just kind of just rewiring them mentally. And as they were reading the Word of God and going to church, God did this whole like, redo on their mind. And then from there, he decided what music he was going to listen to at that point. But we were sharing, because even when I got saved, I disconnected from going out to certain areas parties or different things where I was at, or concerts. And I was just going to the church 7 days a week. I was listening to worship. I was reading the Word. And that was for like a year. I didn't listen to any secular music. But there was that process where God had to renew my mind. He had to basically like literally wash my mind. Like I needed a whole remake over in my whole brain because of what was going on prior to that. All the garbage that was in there.
That's totally me.
Yeah.
In fact, I had to be separated from my friends. God did that because I wouldn't have separated from them.
Yeah, totally.
So he moved me to Newport Beach. I get saved shortly after I moved there, probably within two or 3 months of living there. So I was disconnected from all of my connections and everything else. And then with the whole music part, the same thing happened. Not so much by choice. What I noticed was it was worship music was the only thing that was able to give me any peace. So I'd have to listen to it. And I remember walking down the beach late at night, having a Walkman on. You probably don't remember what Walkmans are.
I'm not. Hey, I do. I was in the 80s.
You were. That was definitely
I had
an
one,
80s thing.
actually.
It was kind of like, so definitely not same as AirPods.
They were cool when they came out with the little headphones. Remember that in the 80s? Because they used to have the big ones.
They have foam and stuff on them.
Exactly. Young kids, Google that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're listening to the worship. You're going down the beach.
So that's really where the change started to happen. What was interesting, I get saved.
Yeah.
And then several years later, the very first funeral I did was before I was a pastor. A friend of mine had died. And it turns out he was probably my best friend in high school. And I didn't know this. But after high school, I did drugs. He did drugs. But he got into the gay lifestyle and went into the homosexual community. And then I got a call from another friend of mine and said, hey, Brad is passing away and he's dying from AIDS. Oh, yeah, and so the last 2 weeks of his life, I ended up being able to just go over to his house. I'd pray with him and did his memorial service. And his mom came up to me after, one of the neighbors' moms came up to me right after the memorial service. She looked at me and goes, Tommy Hughes, this can't be you. I know you. There's no way you could be up there talking about Jesus like that. But that's the transforming that God does. And my friend who died from AIDS is in heaven too.
Exactly. That's what God does. He could use anyone. You can't get discouraged and think you're too far gone. I mean, listen to his testimony right here. Bloody nose, smoking coke and a cigarette in a bar. You're crazy. That's a very bold move. But then God gets a hold of you.
Yeah, when you're drunk, you can do a lot of bold things, right?
Actually, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Okay, hey, we're going to go to the break in a minute. But I have Tom Hughes from the church's 412 out in San Jacinto.
Very good.
Is that it?
Good.
Again? I am killing it right now.
You are.
But your YouTube channel, what is it? Is it called Tom Hughes?
No, it's called Hope for Our Times.
Hope for Our Times, and it's a prophecy update channel.
It is a prophecy update YouTube channel, yes.
So is this daily?
It is daily. There's a lot on there, and I talk about a lot of things.
Okay.
And I'm not bashful.
Okay.
So
well, go to YouTube, click and follow, and get updated daily. And when we get back from the break, we're going to continue, because this is where not that story was cool, but this is where it gets really cool, because this is all the Jesus stuff, what God has done. I love testimonies of talent. I like to hear about the dirt of like where they came from, because then when you hear like what they're doing now, it just shows that's the power. It's a lot of people like to skip over the dirty stuff. Oh, I used to be bad, I got saved, but now I do all this awesome stuff for Jesus. Well, the power is like when it shows how gnarly and messed up you were, and then what God can do with someone's life. And that's the most amazing thing about testimonies. Go to thewhosoevers.com, Follow us, get all the past radio shows, and stay up to speed. And we will be back in 2 minutes right after the break. Peace.
More of The Ryan Ries Show coming up. Post your questions at Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, and or Facebook.
So we've been here in California, and the pandemic shut everything down.
Around the world, people are afraid and on edge.
I thought it'd be a good opportunity for the Whosoever's to be active and doing ministry in this time right now. Since everything's shut down, Idaho's open, so that means we can give the gospel out and reach as many people as possible. We came up with 10,000 flyers, 100 posters, and I just charged it to Idaho.
Every Whosoever's trip is completely insane.
Life-changing.
Guns, God, fireworks, the Holy Spirit,
The Holy Spirit is going down.
skateboarding. I missed it. He came up to me and he's like, dude, what happened tonight was crazy. I've been to youth group, I've been to church, but I've never experienced what happened tonight. And I said, shut your mouth, dude, okay? And I said, wait till the camera gets here. Yeah, now I went from tour mode to daddy duty, so this is gonna be interesting.
You're like, why am I here? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening? Sometimes there's not answers to that.
During this time of coronavirus, when everything's been put on pause, a lot of people were left to look in the mirror of asking themselves, who am I? Who am I without school, sports, social media, friends, and all of these hobbies?
God cares about the smallest details because he has a plan and he has a purpose for everyone's life. That's the message we share with the youth of the nation and of the world. He loves you and he has a plan for every detail of your life. And if you're willing to step out by faith, well, you're gonna watch God do the impossible.
Keep coming, this is awesome. This is awesome, this is why I came. We're saying there's best trick contest happening. The city doesn't know, no one knows. We don't even know if we're gonna get shut down. But as far as I'm concerned, came up with the idea, God confirmed, so I just left and we went to Idaho.
Same place, not again. Ooh, it's up and down in all dimensions. You're too afraid.
Now, back to The Ryan Ries Show.
All right, we are back, and I have Tom Hughes in studio from church is 412 San Jacinto. I got that unlocked today. I'm excited. Don't forget, go to his YouTube channel. And what was the YouTube channel again?
Hope for Our Times.
Hope for Our Times. It's a prophecy update YouTube channel, which is very important, especially with the days that we're living in.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, man, but we're going to get into it. I want to
Okay.
wait till the end of the show to get more into that. So before the break, we were just talking about how you get saved from this radical drug life in Newport Beach, and now you're going to the church, you're going to Calvary Chapel, you're seeing different pastors. After 2 months, finally, you start taking in, you actually can remember what's going on with the message. So there was that supernatural work of the Holy Spirit where God was renewing your mind through the Bible, through the Word. It renews our mind daily. And now, what was the next step? So you're saved, now what?
Yeah.
Can't sell drugs anymore.
No. So no, I can't sell drugs anymore. In fact, what's interesting is I wasn't paying taxes for several years too.
Oh,
So I had to get that right also. I had to get everything right. Right. So I that was another story. We won't get into that today, but I got that right
Episode
also.
2.
And God bless that also. So what happens is I get saved and I go to this retreat. Your dad's speaking, Greg Laurie, Mike McIntosh, a couple other those Calvary guys from that era, from the Harvest Book era.
Yep.
And so I go to this retreat. It's in San Diego. I was a brand new believer, and I'm just, I'm on fire at that point. I don't know what's going on, but I'm on fire. And I think, I think I'm going to be a pastor. I knew about as much of the Bible as, John 3:16 at that point. I knew.
Yeah. But you had that call, like you felt like
you
had that thought, right?
I had that thought. I definitely had that thought. So I went down to my home church at that time was Calvary Costa Mesa. I make an appointment to meet with Pastor Chuck and tell him I want to be a pastor. So I show up at the church to meet with him. They say, okay, your appointment's at whatever time. I go in, this guy comes out, and he says, I'm Romaine. I hear you know who Romaine is? It was a miserable meeting. Anyway, so we met, and he gave me all these, all these things to do. If you're really a pastor, then. If you really want to be a pastor, then. So I didn't do anything Romaine told me to. I decided if I'm going to be a pastor, God will make it happen, and I'm not going to do the things Romaine wanted me to do. So anyways, I really got plugged into going to Bible studies.
Everyone has the same story about Romaine.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just sitting there laughing.
Yeah, that was my first and last meeting
exactly.
I ever had with him.
So you're waiting for God to do something, and
so I got plugged in. I started just going to Bible studies at Calvary Costa Mesa. And then eventually, just to get my act back together, this is after about a couple of years, year and a half, 2 years, my mind's really starting to clear up a lot better. I decide financially I got to get my act together. So I ended up moving back in with my parents. I'm in my late 20s now. And thinking, okay, going back home, got to really suck this up.
You got to regroup, though. You got to,
I did have to regroup. And it was helpful. I wasn't there long, probably about 6 months. Then I got my own apartment. But I got plugged into Harvest in Riverside at that time. So this goes way back. And at that point, I met a group of people. My wife was in that group of people.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. No, she wasn't my wife.
This is where it gets good.
She wasn't my wife yet. Right. And we were definitely opposites. She was a very good girl. I was not that kind of guy.
I've heard that story somewhere.
Yeah. So God did a miracle that she would even like me. It was a miracle.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
If you asked her, she would even say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to hear. So how'd you meet her?
So I didn't know you were going to ask me that, so that's what I get for bringing it up. So there was a Bible study with just a group Bible study, and I had gotten connected with just some people around there and said, you want to go to this Bible study? I said, sure. And they said, well, we're going to be in Yorba Linda Park on Saturday, and we're going to play softball and volleyball, and just come on down there. So I did, and we met at the park. And she didn't really like me that much, and I was... we became friends. I tell you when it really took off was the very first Harvest Crusade down in, I don't even remember what place it was. It wasn't Anaheim Stadium. It was before Anaheim Stadium.
Was it I remember going there.
Pacific Palace?
Yes, the Pacific Amphitheater.
Amphitheater, that's what it was.
At the Orange County Fair.
Yeah, that's where it was, where they have the Orange County swap meet and all that stuff.
I might have been there when you were there.
You would have been
when the fire was lit with you too.
You might have been.
I went to that.
So that was really good for her that night. She got really lucky she met me. And no, I'm kidding. But that was really where everything began with us.
Awesome.
And in that process, I'm getting closer, starting to get to know some of the pastors and things. And then there's a home Bible study I got involved in that she was part of. So I got involved in that. And I said, hey, I'd like to teach sometime. And they let me teach. So I started getting into a rotation.
Yeah.
By this time, I was a Christian for probably 2.5 years at that time, maybe a little bit longer. I get into the teaching rotation, and just slowly did that. Started serving at the church and getting involved.
This is cool. I like how you're kind of telling the story, how you got into ministry and stuff. Because I mean, for listeners that maybe on the East Coast or wherever you're tuning in around the world, he has a thriving big church. And when you look at churches from a distance, you just see this shiny object of like, this church is alive, it's big, they got multiple services. Like you guys were doing like 3 or 4 services before the pandemic hit, but still it's a big church. You still got several services going on, and things are happening, but you look from a distance and you're like, oh wow, like, but you don't see the work process.
Oh yeah.
And how you really started was like, I'm going to be dedicated to going to Bible studies, and then I'm going to be involved in a home group. If you want to be a pastor, like who wants to just get involved in a home group? Who wants to get involved in all these little things? You know what I mean? Like when you really think about it. But this is the process to learn in these environments, and then because of your faithful services to these small beginnings, God does the work and brings the increase. So I love that you're talking about this stuff, because people that are like, if there's someone listening right now, like, I want to be a pastor. I have a call, and God's given me a vision to be in front of thousands of people. I've heard that so many times. Ryan, God's given me a vision. I need to tell my story. I need to speak in front of thousands of people. And I'm like, bro, why don't you go start by cleaning the bathrooms? You know, like, can you serve at all here? No, I'm a call to speak here. Yeah. So anyway, I love that you're telling us the basic process.
It is, you know, and it is a faith in God. God says, "Be faithful in little things, then I'll do these bigger things through you."
Yep.
And it is being faithful in the little things. I mean, it's the same principle with anything. Ask the billionaire how they became a billionaire.
Exactly.
You know, it probably started with some really hard work at a very young age, and they used their brain, and you know, maybe some other things were involved there too. But nevertheless, you don't just wake up one morning and all of a sudden you're a billionaire unless you won the lottery. And if you won the lottery and became a billionaire, good chance you're going to blow all that money. So you're going to have another problem that you've got. But it is these small things. In fact, when I landed at the church that I'm at now, what happened was the pastor that was there, I ended up becoming a pastor on staff at Harvest in Riverside with Greg Laurie. That's where you came from. So I ended up being on staff there. And by the way, I'd been teaching Bible prophecy almost since the beginning of my teaching. But I'm on staff at Harvest in Riverside. I get a call. Don McClure was involved in it. He says, "Hey, this pastor has resigned from this church out in San Jacinto. And are you interested?" And I was, because I had already looked at Seal Beach. I had looked at somewhere down in that area, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach area, a few different areas, Arizona. You know, I was like, wherever you want me to go. Yeah. So I went out there and threw my hat in the ring. And next thing you know, they said sure, and I became the pastor out there. It was a smaller church then, and they had a lot of problems they had to go through. I arrived. They probably had, I'm thinking, 200 adults, maybe 300 when I arrived. Half the church left. They didn't, that's
happens,
just how it is.
Yeah.
And you know what? And you got to deal with that stuff. Yeah. You know, where are all these people?
Yes,
living?
I got 300. Wait, 150.
Yeah, it might have even been 100 by that
exactly.
time, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but you know what? It's God has called you.
Yeah.
And if God's called you, well, be faithful to what he's called you with and what he's called you into, and press forward. Yeah. And so that's what I did. That's always been my personality. If I was doing drugs, I was pressing forward. Yep. If I was dealing drugs, I was pressing forward. It didn't matter what I've done. That was my personality. You work hard, you go for it, and you're going to take your lumps. There's people that are not going to like you in this life, but you got to do what you believe is pleasing to God. And you just got to tough it out.
You can't always get you most of the time, like when you're doing ministry, a lot of stuff doesn't even make sense, you know, when God's doing stuff in your life. And you can't just look at the natural realm. You know, if God has called you to do something and be something, it's not about the numbers. It's not, you can't get discouraged about what's happening, what you see. You just got to be faithful and trust that God is, you know, working out the details. He's doing his work. He's called you there, and he's either put you in a place to develop you for something else, or he's put you there because he's going to do this work, and it's going to take time to till the ground and prepare and get ready, and then he brings the increase, you know. So I want to encourage people that are listening to if they want to do ministry or pastor, like don't think you're going to get up on some stage or you're going to have all these millions and thousands of people. Like God, you have to start at the bottom and let God build you up, and that's the best way to do it anyway. It's just that's just let God just kind of bring the increase and let him open the doors and lead you and guide you. Because you don't want to get in an area that God's not there. Like you don't want to move over to the certain area and say, God, bless what I'm doing over here. You want to be under where God's like, well, I'm blessing here. You want to slide right under that spout of where he's blessing.
You do.
Not like, hey, bless me over here. You know, that never works out well.
Yeah. It's like, hey, God, this is my idea. I want you to bless my idea. How about you come over here with my idea?
Yeah.
You know, there's a million good ideas, but go with the one God idea.
Absolutely.
And press forward in that. You know, I look at it even with the YouTube channel I have. I remember making the videos. I knew what I was saying was right. Yeah. And I knew I had a message that people needed to hear, like yours, right? Mm-hmm. I knew people needed to hear this. And I remember having 7 views, 15 views.
Yeah. And you're like, all that for this.
Well, yeah, there was that. However, I also still knew that God had put it on my heart and my mind, and I knew what I was saying was true and correct. And so,
but you could get, I'm saying for the natural person, you could get discouraged. You're like, I did all this work, I did this video, And God, I thought you called me and I got 7 views.
You would quit. You would,
Yeah,
if
like, it's
that's
not worth it.
You would absolutely quit. Ryan, I'm sure you felt like quitting in certain things. I mean, you're a mover and a shaker. I mean, you look at some of the things that you've done, so you have that personality. But and so you know well that if you just look at the day-to-day numbers or this, you would. There's no way. How could you do that? Most people, that's what they do. They look at the immediate results,
Right?
And so they just say forget it, whether it be ministry or anything else in life. You can't do that. You have to be willing to press forward, and God will increase, and He does increase.
So we have 12 minutes left of the show. Let's talk about, before we even get into that, is there anything else that you would like to encourage the listeners with? Because it seems like this whole conversation has shifted into just how, from taking you from darkness into light, but then God doing this cool thing with ministry. Is there any people or anything you would want to say to people that are wanting to get into ministry? Any more encouragement that you could think of that just off the subject of maybe if they want to plant churches? I mean, because I feel like right now the harvest is ripe and we need more people in the fields.
Yeah, we need more people. We need more people that are faithful and willing to take hits, willing to be bold. I'll tell you what's gone wrong in America.
Yeah.
And I'd say you could fault the church in this. And you can disagree with me in this if you want. That's fine. But I look at it. Here's what happened. Go back about 40 years. Churches started doing demographic studies. And I get demographic studies. I have friends that have done those. And they would send out a survey to a neighborhood where a guy says, hey, I want to go plant a church in this neighborhood. Right? They pick a nice neighborhood or bad neighborhood. It doesn't matter. I want to go plant it there. They sent out a survey. What do you want to hear in this area? So the pastor goes, okay, that's what the people want to hear. That's the message I'm going to bring.
No way. So that's what they do.
That's been happening for decades. And churches get planted that way. So instead of going with the word, what's happened is 2 Timothy chapter 4 has been fulfilled, where in the last days, Paul writes and he says, listen, the people are going to raise up for themselves teachers to itch their ears that will not bring the truth, but will bring good stories and fables.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. So
good stories and fables. That's where we're at, actually.
That's where we're at. So we need pastors that are faithful.
Yeah.
We need people that are faithful, men and women that are saying, no, we need to stand up for the truth, and we need to bring the truth. Here's something else that grinds a lot of the people who follow me, is we do not need a political leader. I'm not saying don't get involved in politics. I have a lot of friends, close friends that are involved in politics, press forward in it. I think that we need that. We need righteousness there. However, what's happened is there are too many people within churches that are looking for a political savior instead of Jesus Christ. And right now, the field is ripe for harvest. What people need to know is, who is Jesus? It is only Jesus who can turn this mess around, because this world is in a mess. But churches, I would even fault for that, for this primary reason, getting away from teaching the truth decades ago and just bringing in the good stories and the fables and getting the people to say, yeah, this is great, and turning it into just a celebrity culture. And listen, it is more than that. It is about the Lord Jesus Christ, and we need to keep that. So with anybody who's thinking, hey, I want to get involved, listen, go with the truth, be willing to say the truth. Of course, Jesus is full of grace and full of truth. Both. He wasn't half grace, half truth. He was both. So you got to go with the truth, but there is the love side of it also, and recognizing what was the message of Jesus. How did he minister to the Samaritan woman? How did he minister to the Pharisees? Two opposite ways. And so we have Jesus, we're able to meet the culture that we have, and the background I have, it's helped me out a lot. Through the things I'm able to share and the reality that I know you need to be bold. Your background, look at where you are now, what God's doing with you. God will use you with your background no matter what it is. If you were a white-collar worker that got saved and you were a multi-millionaire and you were basically a good person, but then you got saved, God's going to use that to reach people that other people aren't going to be able to reach. And God is going to use the Ryan Rieses and the people that watch this program. He will use you, your personality, and don't try to be somebody else. Be the person that you are. Too many people get in ministry. I'm going to be like so and so. Forget that. You're totally you. That's what I love when you came out to our church. That's what resonates with people.
Yeah.
If you tried to be somebody else, it wouldn't work.
I know. There's too many people. I have a question for you too, and I love where you're going with this whole thing. This is totally up my alley here. It drives me nuts when you see this. There's like 20 of the same person. 20. You see this in church culture. Like you look at the way they dress, and they all dress the same way, and they all teach the same way. There's no uniqueness. No. It's the same personality with 10 different people and the same outfits and the same haircuts. I mean, but what's really crazy is they actually adopt the teaching style, and they're just the same person replicated, which drives me nuts. God has created us uniquely. We have a unique call, and I believe that God uses you more when you're just walking in that freedom of who you are. The person, because your personality comes out. Yeah. And that resonates with people. Now, the other thing, what you were saying about earlier about, politics and all that stuff, I have a question for you. And it kind of makes me nervous because with the whosoever's, with the people that we're reaching, I'm going to just lay a blanket statement here before I get into this, because this could kind of, sketch people out from what I'm going to say about them. But we're at outreach ministry. So the majority of people that I'm in front of, I'm at skate parks, I'm in public schools, I'm in public colleges, universities. I'm at concerts, raves, metal concerts, basically Hollywood. I mean, when I go to Hollywood, I'm in the gay community. Like I'm in like there might be like another straight guy there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so the people that I'm surrounded by is New Age, astrology, agnostics, atheists, LGBTQ community, the transgender, like the basically people that are not Christians whatsoever, right? The mainstream in full capacity. So us as Christians, I was thinking about this last night, like would Jesus be a Republican, or would he be a Democrat, or would he be an independent? Where would he find himself in this place? And where do politics and all this stuff come into Christianity? And it's scary for me because I'm a Christian, but I'm on the Great Commission, and if I bring I'm a Republican, or if I try pushing, political agendas, then I have now closed the door to the whole community that I'm trying to reach, which is the world. And the thing that I get a little nervous on is when I see churches getting very I think there's people called to politics, and there has to be people that need to. And I want to because I have friends that are churches like Rob McCoy. Okay, he's up in Calvary Chapel, Godspeak. Awesome. He's called to that, and he's with Charlie Kirk, and there's these guys that are out there that are called, that are doing it well. But I get more nervous when a lot of churches that are bringing more of the politics in to the church community, when it needs to be a place where we can bring the non-Christians in. Because if you're bringing in like the LGBTQ community and you're bringing in these people, they're going to get offended by the politics. So it has to be a very I get nervous. And this is something that I wrestle with, where I'm going, and I'm just going to be transparent here, but I get really well, how do we let people know, you don't want to you don't want to, vote for abortion and stuff, because Jesus says, thou shalt not murder. It's very simple. It's the 10 Commandments, right? But how do we navigate in this time and culture with everything that's going on? We want to stand for righteousness, and we want to stand for law and order. We want to stand for what is right in America and in the world, but we don't want to jump too hard on the bandwagon of politics, because that could close the bridge. And I hope I explained that well, because it's such a touchy subject.
No, I totally got it.
It's a touchy subject.
Yeah, I've had to wrestle with this myself, because my ministry can be seen as political and it's not.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a question. I do a lot of live. I'll take live questions on comments.
Yeah.
And one came up the other day. What do I think about Trump?
Yeah.
I avoided the question.
Yeah.
And I said, here's what I said. I said, here's the problem that we have in our American culture right now. In fact, it's global.
Yeah.
And this is what's happened is people globally, and maybe more in America than anywhere else, are looking for a political savior.
Yeah.
And this is what happened.
Yeah.
And this is what happened when Jesus came the first time. This is another reason why I believe there's evidence he's coming again real soon. When Jesus came the first time, what happened? The Sanhedrin gets together. You have the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They make up the Sanhedrin, right?
Yep.
The Sanhedrin were the left. They were the liberal. The Sadducees were the left. They were the liberal. The Pharisees were conservative. They were, you're looking at the Republicans and the Democrats. You're looking at the conservatives and the liberals, the left and the right. They made up the Sanhedrin. Guess what? Jesus was not the political leader they wanted. They wanted a leader that was going to give them victory over Rome. So what did they do? Both the right and the left. Jesus wasn't the political leader they wanted. They voted to have him turned over to the Romans to be put on a cross. Right. This is the problem where we are today in America, that people have turned in the church. And you know, Rob's a friend, and I have some other guys that are good friends, Rob McCoy and so forth. But in the church in general, there's this climate that we don't really care. We just know that the political leader is going to be the one that saves us.
That's what I was trying to
and that's
hone in
the
on.
problem.
That's what I'm seeing is like it's really gone to the political.
And
I'm a conservative. You know, everyone knows that.
Yeah, I'm conservative. I mean, but biblically, I think biblically.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
going to go that way. Yeah. But the problem is, my message is, we need Jesus. Yeah. This country needs Jesus. Yeah. I don't care who the next political leader is. Yeah. If this country doesn't turn to Christ, it's done. Yeah. And I think we're far down that path already. Mm-hmm. So I get the thought behind, hey, we need to get somebody who thinks righteously into the political places. Absolutely. However, we need Jesus. And what's going to happen is, in the very near future,
we have 1 minute left.
In the very near future, both the left and the right are going to get together. They're going to agree on a leader, and the leader is going to be Antichrist.
Boom, and there it is. Well, when people ask me about voting, or you know, during the elections, who are you going to vote for, this and that, I go, I vote for the person that lines up most with the biblical views. Yeah. I'm not down with murder, so I'm anti-abortion. You know, and we just walk through the whole process, and that will tell you where I land. But definitely, people need to check out your channel. And you nailed it. I'm nervous of a lot of churches looking for a political leader, you know, and it's Jesus that we need. And I think if we can get them to Jesus, then that will bring them to what side they need to vote on for who stands the closest to the biblical views. But it's just crazy times. Yeah. I mean, never in world history has it been this insane, you know, with the climate.
It is.
We're done with the show, but we got to get you back for a prophecy update.
That's what we'll do, prophecy.
All right. Peace, guys.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-ries.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for The Ryan Ries Show.